Samurai Jack premiered on Cartoon Network in 2001, initially starting as a special TV movie event consisting of the first 3 episodes of the series. I, along with a lot of other children my age, were captivated. Created by Genndy Tartakovsky, the same creator as Dexter's Lab, it wasn't too much of a surprise that this show caught on, but with its beautiful scenery, mixed with sci-fi, fantasy adventure, feudal Japan influences, and often wordless storytelling, this was a cartoon like none of us had seen before and possibly ever since. Jack was a great stoic warrior who made subtlety and honor badass, and Aku was one of the greatest villains of all time, being both incredibly evil and yet sometimes hilarious. Of course, since this was the early 2000s, a lot of kids were using the internet for the first time, often going to websites like CartoonNetwork.com to play web games. Well, today we're looking at all of the Samurai Jack web games that Cartoon Network made throughout the years, or at least all the ones that I could find. First up, we have Path of Destiny. I thought I'd get this one out of the way since it's the shortest. The premise is simple. You walk around the screen saving villagers and slicing up bad guys. The sprites are simple and the animation is a bit crude. For a trained samurai, Jack just whacks enemies like he's hitting flies with a newspaper. After slicing up all the baddies, you move on to the next level and repeat. Some new types of enemies begin to appear, but overall the game itself isn't really entertaining enough to make you want to keep going. Next we have Desert Quest. This game has a more specific backstory about a little girl who is hanging on to life after her village is attacked by Aku and his minions. Right away you'll notice that the sprite art is much more detailed in this game than in the last one. It also plays in a beat 'em up style way instead, sorta like Double Dragon. The levels are slow and tedious. You hit some enemies a couple times to kill them, walk forward to find the same exact enemies, and do the same thing over and over again. Since there's seemingly no way to combo your only 2 attacks, you can't speed this process up either. The fact that some enemies take more than 2 hits yet look exactly the same is annoying as well. They could have at least made them blue or something. On top of that, they decided to make the control key jump and the shift button attack. This was actually quite common for web games back then, and it sucked. But it's especially bad when you'd be playing a game where you're smashing the attack button a lot and activate sticky keys. Yeah, like in this one. Aku is in the game too, but his boss fight is slow and tedious as well. After you beat him, the game plays what sounds like the Hallelujah song. Maybe Hallelujah for the game being over? Except it's not. Afterwards they send you off to a new background, same enemies. I don't recommend this one. Next we have Way of the Warrior, a game that I remember a lot more clearly and fondly than the previous 2. Here we play as a younger Jack as he trains around the world to become a great hero, which follows along with the first episode of the series. You basically have 5 minigames to choose from. The first is an archery course with this Robin Hood guy. You aim with the mouse and hold click to increase the power of your shot. At first it feels a bit awkward trying to hit the targets, but once you realize that it's ideal to shoot with full power every time, just aim accordingly and it becomes much easier. The second trial is the Battle of Staffs. This one is all about visual cues and timing. There's 3 different types of attacks to dodge. Your job is to figure out which he is about to use by the animation he makes while performing it. It's sorta similar to Punch-Out. To win, you need to wait until he spins his staff and then attack. It can be a little tough noticing the differences between attacks, but after some practice, it's not very difficult. The third game is a sword challenge. This one is very simple. You just click the direction that the melons are flying at to slice them in half, but avoid hitting the rocks that will stun you. This is probably the easiest level in the game. After that, you have the 4th game, which is navigating a Viking ship through dangerous waters. The only button here is the spacebar, which will cause your ship to accelerate or brake. The challenge here is in avoiding the rocks that will destroy your ship. You must accelerate at the right time so that your ship travels over the rocks while the waves are covering them. It can be a little tricky at first, as there's a delay to braking and accelerating, but it doesn't take too long to get used to. Finally, there's the 5th game, and possibly the most fun. You use the arrow keys to leap from column to column. The columns sway back and forth and also collapse after a while, so you need to be quick, yet accurate. His leap has only one set distance, so the trick here is to simply figure out what that distance is, and then progress at a steady pace. After completing all 5 training missions, you're rewarded with Jack's family sword. All in all, these minigames were short and far from perfect, but it had a nice variety, and they worked just well enough to make you want to complete each challenge and see the game through to the end. Now we have Cavern Raid. The story here is that Aku's men are hiding food stolen from villagers in a cave, except the villagers are obviously copy-pasted right from the sword challenge from the last game. Maybe they're his descendants? Once again, you use control to jump and shift to attack. But since this game requires some platforming, it makes it a little more annoying. Your main goal here is to simply recover the food and then exit the level without running out of health or falling into a pit. I find the fact that the food is locked up in cages to be quite odd. It almost makes me wonder if you were originally rescuing villagers, but the developers thought that maybe that was a bit too dark. Let's give them food instead. The platforming works well enough, the impact noises from hitting people and picking up items feels satisfying, but the lack of enemies and obstacles is pretty apparent. You basically just face soldiers and slightly tougher soldiers. The one particularly annoying part of this game is just how slow Jack climbs ladders. After beating the game, you get a simple text box ending. Overall, this was okay. For the penultimate game, we have Raved Slaves. Based off of a specific episode, this was another game that I remembered quite well. This time Jack finds himself at a rave where evil music is causing all the teens there to dance. Evilly, I guess. For the first time, your goal here isn't to fight off enemies, but the speakers creating the music. In fact, you can't hit the kids too much or you'll lose a life. Luckily, you have a dance button which allows you to avoid the brainwashed kids you come into contact with. The main challenge here is in the platforming. You have a very stiff jumping arc and it's easy to miss short licking jumps and fall to your doom. At the end of each area, you'll run into the DJ mastermind controlling everything. He gets a little more defensive each time, but he isn't hard to take down. Just try to avoid getting electrocuted because it cues a very disturbing scream from Jack. It's short, and the clunky controls can take a little while to get used to, but it's not bad. Okay, I've saved the hopefully best for last. Code of the Samurai. This game is another action platformer similar to Cavern Raid. We get a closer look and more detailed view of Jack as he makes his way through each level, slicing his way through enemies and obstacles. The slicing and jumping feels good, although you need to run before jumping or else you won't get very far. The art looks great, and it plays well enough, and you even get these little mini cutscenes in between areas. But the one major issue of this game is the game mechanics. The game itself is pretty mindless in its strategy. There's darts in the wall that have no real tactic for avoiding, and enemies with unavoidable attacks. There's a slight fix for these issues though. At the beginning of the game, you're given the option to put in codes to unlock secret weapons. The way that these codes were originally obtained was from a promotional tie-in where the codes would appear on TV during episodes. You may think that this is a cheap gimmick, and that may be true, but it was really cool to be able to unlock special weapons after watching the show and writing down codes. That being said, only two of the special weapons are really any good, the shield and the ninja stars. With the shield, you're able to block attacks that are normally unavoidable. And with the ninja stars, you can hit dangerous enemies from afar. The rest of the weapons don't really add anything. You'd think that they do more damage, but they're all basically obsolete when compared to the ninja stars or Jack's sword. As a bonus, if you never saw any of the codes on TV, the game gives you the code for the ninja stars for free if you get a game over. At the end of the game, you get to battle Aku. Yes, the fight itself is about as mindless as the rest of the game, but it's nice to have one final fight with Aku. And hey, at least it looks cool. I'm sure you've guessed this already, but the timing of this review is no coincidence. Samurai Jack is returning to Adult Swim for one last season in only a few weeks. With a darker tone and a more world-weary Jack, we're finally getting the conclusion to the story that we've all waited 13 years to see. Here's hoping to a satisfying ending to such a beloved cartoon series.